Hi, my name is Jennifer J. Chow. I'm the author of the Sassy Cat Mysteries and the Winston Wong Cozies. I'm here today to give you 3 tips about writing a series. So, you want to write a series? The first tip I have is about characters. One tool that's essential for keeping track of things is a character Bible. This can be a hard copy kept in a binder or an online document, but basically it lists all your character names and their traits and any extra details about them. What you want is to have a running list of characters so that you don't repeat names when you're thinking up of new characters. And also you want to avoid having names that sound very similar because that can get confusing for a reader. Another thing is the character Bible offers consistency when you're writing. You want to have the same traits remain across the series. For example, if you have a character that has brown eyes in the beginning of the series, you don't want them to have blue eyes at the end of the series. One thing when thinking about your protagonist is a character arc. Do you want to have a static arc for your main character or a changing arc? The main character who has a static arc will basically stay the same throughout the series. They'll have the same viewpoint about the world, and they'll pretty much act the same at their core, even as events happen to them. However, if you have a character that has a changing arc, they'll often develop over the series. You can see them mature across the books. Something to keep in mind when writing the character arc is how long the series spans. So if you have books that take place a few months apart, you might not have a changing arc. But if they take place across years and decades, you'll probably have character growth happening in your main character. Side buddies are great characters to have in series. They will serve to reflect your protagonists, and they'll often serve as a foil to them. These side buddies can be serious or they can be quirky and eccentric. They'll comprise of friends or enemies or frenemies. For side buddies, you don't even have to use people. In my Sassy Cat Mystery series, my protagonist, who is a pet groomer, has a partner who's a talking sassy cat. Cameos are another thing that you have to think of with your characters. Since you're writing a series, characters can often occur across different books. Now, these characters may have short appearances. They can pop on by and be sort of Easter eggs for your readers. Some people really love spotting characters across the series. I even know of authors who will insert characters not only in their series, but across different short stories and books just to keep that fun reading vibe alive. You can also have side characters come in from the long haul. For example, in my Sassy Cat Mystery series, Alice, my protagonist's sister, comes in on book 1, but in book 2, Mimi Lee reads between the lines. The sister is actually accused of murder, and so she gets much more time in the spotlight in the second book in the series. My second point about writing a series has to do with recaps and reminders. You want to offer a quick summary of the world that you've built, whether this is a community or a small town setting. Also, if you have magical or supernatural elements in your series, you definitely want to lay the rules and groundwork for that world. Something that you might want to remind readers of are the relationships that happen within your books. There can often be a lot of friendships and family ties that you want to describe. However, don't introduce too many of these relationships early on in the book. For example, you don't want to have a family reunion happening in the first chapter of the book and introduce all the relatives in the family tree because that will be confusing for the reader. So I definitely recommend introducing a few characters at a time. You can also mention previous incidents in your book. Now, this often helps lend authenticity and a great backstory to your character. Of course, there's a caveat. No spoilers for mysteries. You can allude to previous cases, but definitely don't tell the reader who the actual killer was, because oftentimes a reader will come in the middle of a series, and so when you give away the ending of a different book, then they won't go back to read that. I know some authors also like to add footnotes to their novels, and they'll actually mention the name of their previous book by title. You can definitely do that, but I find it a little distracting as a reader to um, see the title printed out because it kind of pulls me out of that immersive world that I'm reading. The third thing I want to talk about is a feeling of familiarity. This often happens in series across the themes that are given. So stories will revolve around certain themes. For example, you can have a protagonist that is suffering from the effects of childhood trauma. Maybe they don't feel loved as a kid. So that can continue on across the series. They will often have kind of this struggle, and that will pull them in across the series. This theme may be tied to their character arc, especially if you have a changing arc. You can have a character who's dealing with the wants of being loved, and then you can see them mature and develop over time in the series. Authors can create taglines or author branding from themes. For example, my main characters are all Asian American, and so they have a lot of cultural tie-ins to their identity. There's often an idea of family expectations and a collectivist culture. Sometimes even the food that they like influences how they act and feeds into who they are. So my tagline actually is that I write multicultural mysteries. Format can also give the reader a feeling of familiarity in a series. You should definitely have the same voice across your novels in the series. So if you start off with someone who's funny, I would definitely keep that attitude of wit and humor across your books. The expected structure plays a role in format. When you're starting with a point of view, for example, a first-person perspective, I would think that you would continue with that same viewpoint going across your books. This way, the reader feels tied in and connected to your character. Of course, there are outliers to this. People can experiment with structure. I do think, though, that when you jump from one point of view to another, it can often alienate readers who are really invested in one of your characters. The other thing to think about is genre conventions. Genre conventions have to do with what's expected in the genre. For example, in the cozy mystery arena, books are often expected to be lighthearted with little sex and little violence. So I definitely want to follow along those guidelines. Also, in cozy mysteries, everything ties up neatly at the end, and there's a sense of justice being served. When I'm writing a cozy mystery series, I follow this convention just to give that sense of comfort and familiarity to my readers. Thank you for listening to my talk about series. You can connect with me online at jenniferjchow.com. I blog there regularly, and I also have a newsletter you can sign up for. I'm also active on social media on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under @JenJChow. Thanks for listening, and happy writing.